It's October 2011, and bad news just hit the
I love you,
John Buchanan.
face to face again.
The father of a 32-year-old American
Jessica
woman
Buchanan, held for 3 months by pirates in Somalia,
who was working for the Danish demining group in Somalia. His daughter, Jessica, had just been abducted by the dreaded Somali pirates, a group of terrorists responsible for rampant killings and kidnappings in northern Somalia. She was returning from an anti-mine training with her colleague, Paul Hagen Thisted, a 60-year-old Danish citizen. Both were kidnapped in Galkayo and held captive for 3 months until the prestigious Blue Squadron of SEAL Team 6 came to their rescue. Sit tight and enjoy this thrilling story of one of the most daring hostage rescue operations ever carried out by trained military professionals. Jessica Buchanan was living with her husband in one of the safer areas of Somalia with her Danish colleague, Paul Thisted. She worked for the Danish Demining Group, an aid organization that cleared unexploded mines in African and Middle Eastern conflict zones. Jessica had a mission to train local residents on the dangers of mines and also provide humanitarian aid to them. At first, everything seemed to go as planned, but on October the 25th, 2011, the story changed. That day, Jessica had just concluded training with her colleague, Paul. She was preparing to return to their base when the unexpected happened. 10 minutes into their return journey, they were surprised when a massive car forced their convoy to an abrupt halt, with several trucks surrounding them. Before they could figure out what was going on, about 30 men with AK-47 rifles jumped out of these trucks and started banging on the window of their Land Cruiser. The men yelled orders in a language Jessica didn't understand, as one of them pointed his gun at her head. Jessica's security advisor was violently dragged from the vehicle while a heavily armed man gave orders to Jessica's driver, who willingly hit the gas. Jessica and Paul were petrified. They had just been abducted by the dreaded Somali pirates. Soon, the news of their abduction spread all over the media, eventually reaching the United States. The aid organization Jessica worked for immediately notified the American Embassy in Nairobi, Kenya, which in turn informed the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. From there, phone calls were made to Jessica and Paul's family members, informing them of the situation, telling them to stay calm and not act rashly.
I love you.
Before the end of the day, high-ranking officials also briefed then U.S. President Barack Obama about the incident. While the pirates were preparing to contact authorities to demand a ransom, Jessica Buchanan was already a top priority at the White House. 3 months later, Jessica was still in captivity as the terrorists had rejected a $1.5 million ransom offered to them by the U.S. government. Was she going to die? Well, not yet. The young woman fought hunger, heat, and the constant fear of what the terrorists would do to her. But as if all that wasn't bad enough, a urinary tract infection had spread through her body. In a final video message to Western authorities, Paul and Jessica are seen begging for their lives. 10,000 miles away in Washington, the cell phone of the famous SEAL Team 6 was buzzing. They had just been alerted about Jessica Buchanan's plight in the hands of terrorists, clenching their fists as they heard Jessica desperately pleading for her life. Over the next few weeks, SEAL Team 6's Blue Squadron trained day and night for the rescue operation, and on January the 25th, 2012, they swung into action. President Obama had given the green light for the hostage rescue, and 24 of the best warriors were chosen for this mission, which was to free both hostages unharmed. Their plan was to parachute over Somalia and then approach the pirate camp on foot so as not to alert the enemy with loud noises. $100 million was set aside for the operation, while the necessary details were gathered from U.S. operations base in Djibouti, 500 miles away from the pirates' camp. With final preparations completed, the SEALs boarded their C-130 transport aircraft and took off from Mogadishu. All eyes, including those of the president, who was monitoring the operation via live feed, were now on the hostage rescue. But the SEALs would face serious challenges ahead. challenges that should have been enough to cancel the mission. First, a violent solar storm had erupted, hitting the Earth's magnetic field so hard that radio communication with other support units became difficult. Secondly, the wind speed was more than double what would have canceled a regular mission. However, every one of the 24 men on board the SEAL team was willing to take that extra risk. After 3 hours, they reached their drop point, and immediately everyone rose from their seats, hooked up their oxygen tanks, and then dropped from more than 20,000 feet into 40-knot wind. A few seconds of free fall were followed by an electric speed of 120 miles per hour, which is normally achieved by competitive athletes in optimal conditions. But despite the absurd wind conditions, the SEALs managed to land semi-cohesively, with a few runaways who were dragged across the savannah for hundreds of yards before separating from their parachutes. Watching each other's back, the sailors put on their combat gear and wrapped up their shoes, walking several miles through the 100-degree hot Somali night. After nearly an hour of silent marching, the sailors reached their last cover before irreversibly committing to the assault. They were now only 500 meters from the pirate camp and had changed direction several times to always have the wind in their faces, eliminating any possibility of being spotted early. Their goal was to remain undetected for as long as possible while maintaining speed. They had long been within earshot of the pirates, and only the night's darkness kept them from the attention of enemy guards. An experienced SEAL named Justin Sheffield led the group, and at his hand signal, his fellow men spread out far to the left and to right to bring as many rifles forward as possible. Snipers positioned themselves on the outer flanks and monitored their comrades' quickening pace. As the sailors moved forward in perfect unison, they could watch through their thermal scopes as the enemy sentry slowly became anxious and woke the other pirates. The SEALs quickened their pace while Justin Sheffield aimed his laser at one of the Somali guards, and, without having to say anything, his comrades did the same. Their infrared beam was completely invisible to the pirates without night vision, although they could sense some movements in the dark. With a loud clack, they racked their heavy PKM machine guns and got into position. The pirates pointed their weapons roughly in the direction from which they heard the sounds. Meanwhile, the SEALs increased their pace once again, less concerned with noise discipline than with closing the distance to the hostages before all hell broke loose. With a deafening noise, the pirates' machine gun kicked off and fired deadly 7.62mm rounds at the SEALs, followed by several AK-47 assault rifles. The snipers, who had been waiting for just this moment, immediately silenced the enemy machine guns before seeking new targets. With surgical precision, the Navy SEALs returned fire, while simultaneously fighting their way forward to find Jessica. After hours of shooting under simulated stress conditions, the SEALs spotted two pirates with AKs standing right over Jessica, who was crouched on the ground. Sheffield and another SEAL broke away from the formation, and with accurate shots, they both made sure these pirates would never kidnap anyone again. When Sheffield saw the American's bright face, he dove on top of her in the ongoing firefight, shielding her from the enemy crossfire with his own body. More SEALs joined in, and within seconds, Jessica was protected by multiple layers of the world's best warriors. Meanwhile, another comrade had taken care of Paul Thisted, protecting him from enemy fire as well. When all 9 pirates had been neutralized and the gunfire stopped, Sheffield put Jessica on his shoulders and sprinted out of the pirate camp as far away from any danger as possible. The other SEALs formed a human shield around the two, ready to resume the fight at any moment. After the energy-sapping battle, Sheffield dropped Jessica off with the U.S. Air Force pararescue jumpers who were already waiting. The SEALs also blew up the pirates' arms depot while marching to the landing zone of the exfiltration helicopter. Jessica was finally on her way home. Meanwhile, someone reached out to Jessica's dad.
We're doing well as a family. And Jessica, we have not seen her yet. So today's the day.
From the situation room and told him to make sure his phone line was clear for an important call. Anxious, Mr. John Buchanan and Jessica's sister waited for 40 minutes until the call finally came through. This time, John Buchanan spoke with President Barack Obama. John, this is Barack Obama. I've got some really good news for you. Your daughter Jessica has been rescued and evacuated by our SEAL team, and she's on her way home. A few minutes later, he heard from Jessica. Daddy, I love you, and I'll be fine. I'm okay. Giving gratitude to FBI investigators and the special operatives who supported and carried out the mission to save his daughter, Mr. Buchanan said, "We're just extremely grateful to God first and to the U.S. government. They've been great throughout this whole thing from the first day they were there, supporting us." That ends the thrilling story of Jessica Buchanan's rescue, and we want to say a big thank you for watching. See you in our next episode. Goodbye.